Hi and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today in this webinar. I've got Josh Nicholson here from Scite, who's going to give us a product demo. We've got a whole hour together. My name is Romy Beard. I'm the EIFL Licensing Program Manager. And just before we get started and hand over to Josh, just to remind you, the webinar is recorded, so you can watch the recording later. And if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A or the chat. I'll keep monitoring that and we'll take some breaks and see if there's any questions, or I'll just interrupt you, Josh.
That's best.
Yeah, so for those of you that are joining from the different EIFL countries, you probably have heard that we've signed an agreement with Scite to use, and I wanted to just introduce you to the Scite page on the EIFL website, and you can find us on the eifl.net under what we do, negotiated research support services. And there you can select Scite from the list of the different products, and there's lots of information. And this is also where we'll post the link to the webinar. There's different links, a free trial request form, walkthrough guides, and additional anything else that Josh thinks we should add, we'll be adding it on there. And in case this comes up as a question, I just wanted to remind you what the agreement includes. So we've got free access for libraries in this list of countries from Congo through to Zimbabwe. So the way it works is that libraries need to sign up to get the free access. We'll check the forms and send them over for Scite to be setting it up through IP recognition. And then we also have discounted access for these countries, from Albania to Ukraine. So if that's something of interest, please drop me an email and I'll send you over the details. But this is just as a reminder. And that's everything for me. So I'll hand over to Josh. Thanks very much, Josh, for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks everyone for tuning in. So I will try to speak slowly, but I tend to speak quite quickly because I get excited and because I'm now drinking my morning coffee. So I'm joining you from New York. My name is Josh Nicholson. My email address is on the screen, and our Twitter handle is also on the screen. If you have any questions or feedback, really do email me and let me know, because we certainly improve by listening to people's questions and feedback. And so today I'm going to walk you through how Scite can help you as a researcher or as a librarian, and really kind of just anyone that's looking at research. And our tool is similar to other citation tools, but also quite different. And so I think there's a lot of potential use cases for various researchers. And so I generally like to start my talks on a very optimistic note, and that is that, research in general is quite amazing. It's given us the internet to have these virtual talk around the world, to record it, to watch it later. It's given us life-saving vaccines, powerful telescopes, pasteurization, the computer in your pocket or your purse, and all of these things, not just technology, but also policy and social sciences have been made possible by scientific research, and that extends across time, across disciplines. And I think, how we utilize that research, just reading as PDFs could be done a lot better. And so that is one of the challenges, is that, there's so much research in the biomedical field alone. There's more than 1 million papers, every 2 papers being added per minute, which I think is actually an underestimate at this point. It's probably double that, especially if you include other disciplines. And then there's been studies that look at reproducibility. That is, if you try to validate or reproduce a study externally as a large pharma or as another group, oftentimes you'll not be able to. And so how do we deal with this massive amount of valuable information, and how do we know what we can trust, what we can rely upon, what we can build our own work on as researchers or as students? And so that is really the aim of Scite, is that we built it to make research more reliable, to make it more understandable, and then generally to provide more nuance, because there's a lot of different, complexities in research, and we think, showing how something has been cited as opposed to just simply how many times can really help. And so I would encourage anyone on the call, not just Romy, to interrupt me at any time and to ask a question, or to simply tell me to slow down. I would also say, go to scite.ai and follow along. Even without that access, you get 2 weeks free, so you can sign up and explore the tool freely. But I'll walk you through various features now. And so generally, the way that I like to show Scite is to show the world as it exists without Scite, and then to show it through the lens of Scite. And so I have a background in cell biology, so this is my work. There I am. I finished that, so I got my PhD about 7 years ago. And the idea behind Scite really borrows from my experience as a researcher, and was addressing this problem of how do I know what to trust? How do I know what has been reproduced? How do I know what has been challenged in the literature? And so generally, when we look at a scientific paper, we look at where is it published? So is this in a fancy journal? Do I know it? Do I trust it or not? Similar type question with the authors. Do I know any of them? Do I know their reputation? Do I know their work? Do I trust it? Etc. Similar to the affiliations, again, looking at these things and making a snap kind of judgment. Okay, I know that university, I trust that university, or is it from somewhere else that I haven't heard of? And then last but not least, we look at some metrics. So the number of times an article has been cited, the number of times an article has been viewed. And in general, I would say we use these metrics very superficially. So the number of times an article has been cited, a high number we'll say is good. A low number we'll say is maybe not so good. Similar with views, tweets, annotations, really kind of more is better. And that's not really capturing the full story, because not all articles are citing my work for the same reason. Maybe some of them are discussing it. Maybe some of them are using methods that I used. Maybe some of them have looked at the same claim that I've made and either support it or challenge it. And so in today's world, if you look at a traditional citation index, so if you look at a Scopus, a Web of Science, or a Dimensions, you will see a list of titles. And so this is, what most citation indices, or really all citation indices look like, a list of papers that cite the work. To see what this paper says, or what this paper says, would mean you need to open it, read it, find the in-text mention of my work, and then understand it. And so to look at how my work has been cited by 58 documents would really require you to open up 58 documents. And that's hours of work at best, potentially much more, to look at, what do these different studies say about that? And that is really kind of what we're trying to address, is this missed opportunity, right? There is this valuable, rich information, a conversation happening amongst these papers and my work, but we're missing out on what that conversation is saying. And so with Scite, if you come back here, you can open up that conversation. And so we have this browser extension for Chrome, Safari, Firefox, and Microsoft Edge. And again, this is free to download. So if you get it, it will show our information virtually anywhere you're reading a scientific article online. So it will show on the version of record. It will show in PubMed. It will even show in other citation tools if you want to use that. So here it is in PubMed. You can see it next to each individual result, showing our metrics. And so it also even shows next to individual references on various publishers as well. And so the idea here is that Scite are kind of like glasses. You can see and understand research without Scite, but you can see and understand research a lot better with Scite. And so on this browser extension, we show 4 things. So the top is the number of citing papers. So this is traditional, and this is what you would see generally on papers. So there's 55. And so you can see we have quite good coverage at this point, in fact, better than some places are showing. And then we break those those papers down into statements and classify them as supporting, mentioning, or contrasting. And so what you can do is not just look at these things and make a snap judgment, but you can click that and it will bring you over to Scite. And what you'll see up top is basically the same metadata as the version of record. So the title, the authors, if you hover over there, the affiliations, a link back to the full text, a link to a journal dashboard, the abstract, etc. And then if you scroll down, really, and this is the key kind of differentiator between Scite and other tools, is that we show this citation context. So this excerpt of text, these 3 sentences, were taken from this citing article. So this work cites mine. And you can read very simply, how does it cite this work? So in this case, it says, in agreement with previous work, and then cites Nicholson et al., the trisomy clone showed similar aberrations, albeit to a lesser extent, supplemental figure S2b. And so they're indicating that they support my work and that they're supporting evidence for it. And so in this case, we classify it as supporting. And so we have a deep learning model, which I'll talk about a little bit in a second, that classifies these citation statements, which is really this text around here, to say, is this a supporting citation statement, or is it a contrasting citation statement, or does it mention it? And so this allows you to see, has this paper been supported in the literature or not at a glance. In addition to this citation type and this automatic classification, we show where was this excerpt from. And so this excerpt of text comes from the results section of this citing article that was published 3 years after mine by these authors. And if there's shared authors, this would be flagged as a self-citation. This information shows how this article itself has been cited in the literature as well. And so you can see this article, which supports mine, has also been supported in the literature by others. And so that is at the core of Cite, is showing the citation context, showing how something has been cited as opposed to just how many times it's been cited, and then allowing you to filter it in various ways, whether that's by supporting evidence, contrasting evidence, mentioning, or if you wanted to search them. So you can search these citation statements over here. And so this will search these different papers and it will limit it. And you can see now here it's mentioning yeast because that's what I searched for on yeast. And you can see that there's my citation in blue, but you can see that there's 3 other ones. And these would be called co-citations, and they can be interacted with. So you can see them and hover over them and you'll see the information. So this is aneuploidy drives genomic instability in yeast. The other one is karyotypic determinants of chromosome instability in budding yeast. And the third one is the presence of extra chromosome leads to genomic instability. And so these are grouped because they've all found basically the same phenomena in different systems. And so this is a powerful way not only to kind of just look at how an individual article has been cited, but also to discover related work. And so you can hover over these and then click on them and open up the cite reports or open up the full text if you wish as well. One thing you might notice from this one is that this is classified as a preprint. And so we are not only adding peer-reviewed articles, but also preprints from sources like medRxiv, bioRxiv, Research Square, as well as arXiv. So in addition to searching these, looking at citation statements or types, you can filter by year. And so if you want to see relevant, you can see this green is showing supporting. So there's supporting citations coming in these later years, the paper sections. And I would really kind of stop here and emphasize that paper sections, it's not using this sophisticated or fancy artificial intelligence, but it's quite powerful, because if you look at how an article has been cited in the discussion section, what you're getting is a lot of kind of expert interpretation, understanding, and nuance around what my study showed. And so obviously reading the article, the full text is great, but it's also very useful to look at what have all these experts said about this study through their citations, and can that help me to understand this more quickly? And so this is something that is quite useful when trying to understand a study, and I think shows that there's much more than just these supporting types of citations or contrasting cite. There's these section citations, which is very valuable. Continuing down, as you see, we allow you to also filter by the publication type. So is it an article? Is it a preprint? And then is it a self-cite? Meaning, are there shared authors supporting this work, or is it completely independent? You can also see who is citing this work the most. And so that was my PI, Daniela, but this is a group that we collaborated with, and this is a group that supported us. And then which journals are citing this work the most as well. And so this can also help you understand potentially where you might like to submit or other related work. Continuing down, you can then do a couple things. One is that you can visualize this report. And so if you prefer a graphical interface, you can click this. And what this will show is the same thing that we're just showing on the citation network, but is showing it graphically with these nodes and edges. And so there's my work in the middle. And in green represents a supporting citation statement. And then in blue represents a contrasting citation statement. And so if I click on this edge, so this is the paper that's supporting my work, you can see the supporting citation statement here. And you can also see not only what papers say about my work, so clicking on these edges, but you can also see what I say about the work of others. And so it's both directions. And really, again, this is kind of like a conversation. What are these papers saying about my work? And what am I saying about the work of others? You can choose to zoom in on these things. You can choose to show mentioning cites. So by default, we hide the mentioning cites just because it starts to get a bit noisy. But you can choose to explore that. You can choose different layouts to look at this in different ways. This one's quite similar, but this one can show the hierarchy looking at different dates and things like this. And then if you come back here, what you can also do is start to expand these things. And so the size of the node relates to how many citations this paper has received versus this paper. So this is a highly cited article because the node is quite large. And you can click that and see. So there's 1,000 citations, 52 of those are supporting, over 1,000 are mentioning, and 3 are contrasting. And you can not only just click on those, but you can also expand this. So this is a way to grow the citation network and see how multiple papers interact. And you can continue to grow this as you wish. And it will, depend upon what you're looking at, but you can start to find some relationships amongst a group of papers. And again, this one is a large node, which is not surprising that multiple papers in this network are citing it. And so this is, again, just a graphical way of looking at what we showed on the citation network. If you want to work with this information in another system, you can download that as a CSV. You can also add this to a dashboard, and I'll show you what a dashboard looks like a bit later. And so maybe at this point, you're wondering, how do we do this? And so before going into other kind of features, it might be useful to talk a bit about how we built this. And so in order to show this citation context, we need access to the full text, which, as I am sure everyone on the call is aware of, is not the easiest thing to get. And so we utilize open access sources like PubMed Central and Paywall, but then increasingly we partnered with publishers themselves to gain access to content that is not open. And so to date, we have analyzed over 26 million full text articles and extracted 910 million citation statements from them. And so that generally looks like this. So you will get a PDF in most cases, XML for newer publications. PDFs are not very amenable to text mining. They come in 2 columns, single columns. The in-text citations can be superscript, subscript, they can be parentheticals. There's a lot of different formatting. And so there's a lot of machine learning that goes into identifying these in-text citations, which is denoted by these blue boxes around the names. And as you can see, it's quite good capturing most of these citations, but it's not perfect. And it's especially not perfect as you go back, to PDFs that are sometimes 100 years old. And so here is one that is missing, whereas, it's captured most of them. Once you identify that in-text citation, you then need to match that to the reference. And again, the references have a bunch of challenges with them as well, because in the reference section, there can be a variable degree of information. You can have all authors listed. Sometimes you can have just 2 authors listed. You can have journals be abbreviated. And so we need to take that reference string and reliably match that against metadata from Crossref. And we do that, hundreds of millions of times. And so this is a process that we've had to really scale up. And it works quite well now. And on a good day, if we really need to, we can do about 500,000 PDFs, extracting out the citation statements and classifying them. Once we have extracted out that in-text citation, we also grab the sentence where the citation is mentioned, the one before it, and then the one after, and we call that the citation context. So it's generally 3 sentences. We then have a deep learning model that looks at that statement and says, okay, does this provide supporting evidence? Does it provide contrasting evidence? Or does it simply mention the claim? And the way that we've developed that was to read roughly 40,000 citation statements as members of the team, so MDs or PhDs, across different disciplines, to read them and say, okay, these authors are citing this work and that they indicate that they're either supporting it and that they have evidence, or that they're contrasting it and they have evidence. And that is our training data that has gone in to feed this deep learning model that looks at 10,000 different variations of each word, the sentence structure, and really the rhetorical function. We also have a holdout set of 10,000 manually annotated citation statements that is intended to be representative of the literature that we use to test against to improve the precision and the recall of the model. And it's not perfect, and it will never be perfect because it's exceedingly difficult to do this, right? Researchers don't always write in the clearest way. There can be a lot of very specialized terms, a lot of custom formatting that can mess with sentence segmentation. And so it's challenging, although I would say it's quite good and the best that's out there. And so what you can do is not just trust us at all cases. So you can actually read the citation context. You can also see the confidence that the model has in making this classification. So this one is not perfectly confident that this is a supporting citation statement, but it's pretty high up there. And so if you're reading a citation statement and you really don't think it's supporting or contrasting or mentioning, next to each one, we have the ability to flag a citation. And with this, you can say, this actually looks like it's just mentioning, this is why it is mentioning. That is then sent to us, and two experts, so two humans, will review this and either accept it or reject it. If they accept it, it will then say expert classified, and it won't show the model numbers anymore. And I think that's really important because to have a system without this feedback mechanism or human interaction would require a perfect precision. And I don't think that's going to be the case no matter how sophisticated we get with deep learning, because it's really challenging to look at this across different disciplines. With that said, I would say it's also necessary, because to look at 910 million citation statements as humans would be a massive undertaking and really is just unpractical. And so going beyond just looking at how an article has been cited, so this is how an article has been cited, we take that different way of looking at citations and apply it to researchers, apply it to universities, to companies, and to journals. And so you might notice that each name here can be clicked. And so if you click Aaron, who was an undergrad in our lab and went on to do a PhD at UCSF, you can see how many publications they have, how many citation statements they've received, and then also how many citation statements they've given. So citations going both ways. And so what you can see is, here is Aaron's work that has the most citations. And it has 7 supporting citation statements, 62 mentioning. So you can filter based on these various things to see most supported, newest publications. And again, you can open them and see that information to see how has it been cited. Coming back here, you might also notice that you can click on a university. You can also click on a journal to see this. And then one thing that I would also emphasize here is that there's a lot more information that we can start to surface over time. So how many open access articles is Aaron citing, for example? How many times are they the first to cite a paper? All these kinds of fun different metrics that will help authors better understand their writing behavior and see are there some interesting patterns. So in addition to looking at how a researcher has been cited, and again, you can set an alert here, maybe not again, I haven't mentioned this. You can set an alert to see when there's a new publication or a new citation to Aaron's work. So you can follow researchers and see how they've been cited. In addition to this, you can also click on journals and look at this citation information in aggregate at the journal level. And so here is OncoTarget, a journal that's published by Impact Journals. It's open access. And then here you can see the breakdown of information we have on OncoTarget. So there's roughly 27,000 articles, 26,869 total publications. Here is the breakdown of citations. So 25,000 supporting citations, 468,000 mentioning citations, and then about 2,000 contrasting citations. And this is pretty representative of what you see in the literature, whereas most are mentioning. And I should say mentioning are very valuable and can have a lot of nuance and interpretation. you'll then see supporting at about 5%, and then contrasting really at less than 1%, about 0.6%, and so they're quite rare. You can then look at editorial notices, so how many retractions does this journal have, withdrawals, corrections, errata, etc. And then we have a simple ratio that we call the cite index. And the cite index is really looking at the number of supporting cites over supporting plus contrasting cites. So it's from 0 to 1. If you had all supporting cites, you'd have 1. And so the higher represents more. You can look at this in different time periods. So if you want to look at a 2-year window versus a 5-year window to look at those citations, you can also look at this in different subject areas. In this case, it's just oncology, see how it ranks against other journals. And then you can see this graphically to see, what does this look like over time? Are there big changes? And in this case, it doesn't look to be too much of a big change, which is pretty common. Scrolling down, you'll see then an author list. And what this is going to show is who has published in this journal the most, and then how have they published. And so you can scroll down and you'll see some big names here in cancer research, and you can go explore their publication, their track record, if you'd like. Scrolling down further, we'll show you then the articles within this journal. And by default, we show which is the most supported article. So this has the most supporting citation statements. So does this. So these two are at the very top, but you can filter them based on different things. So say you want to see the most supported where there's no contrasting citation statements, you can do that. You can also organize by, the most recent, matching these, which apparently has a date issue because we're not in 2106. And then look at that information and go deeper looking into the citation record. And so this one had 0 citations, should not show much. Say you're interested not just in clicking on journals this way, you can come to the journal list and explore these. So you can search for any journal or any publisher and look at the different journal track records. And again, all these different dashboards will open up into something similar that I just showed to you. We also have the ability to look at this not just at the journal level, but at the affiliation level. And so you can look at different universities around the world to see how has work out of that university been cited. So again, looking at the total number of articles, the breakdown of citations, editorial notices, and then the cite index, which is quite high. And so this university is doing something where there's a lot more supporting citations, could be more physics studies, things like this. The researcher that's published most out of that institution, and then again, the most supported, most cited, most mentioned, however you want to look at it, is a different, powerful way to look at this. And so this would be quite useful for a lot of people on the call, I think, to look at their own institution. And this is utilizing publicly available data, so it might not be perfect. So these 2,000 publications, is our best attempt at looking at how this institute's been cited. But generally, sometimes institutes themselves can have good records. So we allow users to create a custom dashboard, and they can just simply copy and paste a list of DOIs if they have a list of that, or they can import a Zotero library or a Mendeley library. And this is also useful for creating custom dashboard, say from other tools, like you did a search on PubMed, but you want to see how it's been cited in Cite. You can export a CSV from PubMed and then copy and paste the DOIs here. So this provides some flexibility around that to look at how a journal's been cited and organization's been cited, and to better understand it from this lens of, how has it been cited? What is the most supported work? In addition to that, we also allow users to look at our search in various ways. So say you are a new PhD student or new to this field, or even, have been in this field for decades, and you're interested in chromosome disaggregation. If you search that, we will, so there's 2 searches I should also emphasize. If you're using paper search, it will search the title and it will search the abstract. And you can see that we've matched 871 papers to chromosome disaggregation in the title or the abstract. We then have some pretty interesting ways of filtering on this. So say you want to see the most supported work in any topic, and so you can again put in whatever you're interested in. Say, I want to see papers that have at least 5 supporting citations. And so this narrows it down. And again, you can see here's 5, this one has 21. And what you can do from this is see who has the most supported papers in this area. And so Don Cleveland, who's a member of the National Academy, has 9 papers where there's at least 5 supporting citations on chromosome segregation. And so this is a powerful way to see who is, kind of a leader in the field. And then if you want to see who's, emerging as a leader, you can restrict these things to more recent publications. It will narrow it down even further. And then once this refreshes, you'll start to see a lot of, postdocs and things like this in the list. So this is useful for finding potential collaborators or just better understanding who's working in the field, who's publishing work that's highly supported, and then where are they from. So if you look at the affiliations, you can see where these researchers are from. You can restrict down to retracted, if there are any retracted, and you can filter on all these different ways. And so this is a powerful way to search the literature and to better understand different topics. And I'm going to go ahead and just limit this down to 1. And what you can do from this is not just say, okay, here's different papers that I need to read and understand, but you can create a custom dashboard based on that. And so here is a custom dashboard that's looking at chromosome missegregation. It's based on the filters that we set, so publications from 2015 onwards, where there's at least 1 supporting citation statement. And so you can save this, and you can turn on email alerts for when there's new citations to this, which I'm going to turn off. And then you can create a custom dashboard. And so this custom dashboard allows you to look at a group of topics based on whatever your interest is. And in this case, chromosome segregation, it'll show you this information in aggregate. And that way you'll be better, positioned to look at and understand this different field. And so this is useful for looking at different topics, different drugs, different diseases, really kind of whatever you're interested in. And it doesn't have to be biomedical literature. It can be economics research, it can be social sciences, things like this. And so maybe I should pause for a second to see if there's any questions before I continue. So I would say if you have any questions, add them to the chat or just shout them, I guess, at me. Are there any
questions yet, Josh? But I think it's a good idea to take a couple of minutes to let people digest, because there's so much information, isn't there?
There is.
I can't see anything in the Q&A yet, so everyone, if you have any questions, you pop them in the chat, or if there's something Josh has showed us that you want him to show again, or you're not sure, we've still got loads of time, so.
Yeah, and I can keep going too, so you can ask questions as I talk. But yes, there's a lot of information, and I do go quite quickly. I think the general thing to understand is that, everywhere citations apply, research articles, journals, institutes, this also equally applies. It's just showing more. It's showing the citation context, and then it's providing various ways to filter on that. And so the next few things that I'll show are quite helpful for when you're reading. I mean, this was quite helpful for when you're reading and preparing a manuscript. So there's 2 things. So one is, if you come to Cite, you can see this organized in all these different ways. So creating a custom dashboard, going to the journal list, the affiliation list. We also have funders, if you want to look at dashboards related to funders. We then have a tool that is called the reference check. So the reference check is designed to help an author, once they have a manuscript ready for submission, to look at their references to see, okay, are the references that I'm using, are they sound? Or more generally, how have they been cited, right? So we want to avoid citing references that are retracted, and maybe we want to understand if references that we have used have been challenged by others. And so to demonstrate the utility of this, I like to look at this article. And so this article was published in Frontiers in Psychology in November of 2020. And I should emphasize, this doesn't have to be a published document. Really, it's designed for an unpublished document. So you can upload a work in progress, and that can be a Word document or a PDF. But this one is useful for showing because had they run the reference check, they might have avoided some issues. So if you download that PDF and then come over to Cite, what you can do is go to the reference check and upload it. You can also use a URL of a PDF, but sometimes it's easiest and most robust to just grab the PDF. So we've just grabbed the PDF, and now what we're going to do is run the report. And so what we're doing here is applying what we do millions of times with published documents and giving that to the user to do with an individual document. And what we will do is identify those in-text citations, take out that citation context, match that to Crossref, and then match that against our data. And so if you click here, from this paper, you can see that we detected 41 references. And so there might be more references in this paper. We won't be able to detect a newspaper. I mean, we can detect it, but we can't match it. So a newspaper or a magazine, really everything in our system relies upon having a DOI like this. It doesn't have to have an explicit DOI written out, but it needs to have a DOI issued to it. Otherwise, we have nothing to match against. And so in this case, we identified 41 references, and then we flagged that 2 references have some editorial concern. So a retraction, a correction, a withdrawal, a errata, things like this. As you can see in this case, this is a published document, so we're able to identify this. But again, this will work with a document without that header, and it just needs to look, like a manuscript. So scrolling down, you can see this publication that we uploaded referenced 41 papers in reference statements. And so here is one of their references. They're citing this work, From Seeing to Being, Subliminal Social Comparisons Affect Implicit and Explicit Self-Evaluations, which was published in 2004, but was actually retracted. And it was retracted in 2007, or 2013, sorry. So this paper has been retracted for nearly 8 years at this point, but is still being cited. And so maybe they're citing that because they're discussing the retraction. And so if you search this, you can see if that's the case. So it says, second, life satisfaction can be influenced by objective social context through a more unconscious path with little conscious attention or monitoring. And then they cite Stoppel and Blanton in 2004. And some of you might recognize this name because this researcher out of the Netherlands had over 20 papers retracted due to fraud. And so this research from 2020 is citing work that was shown to be fraudulent and has been retracted for 7 years. And that happens across publishers, across journals, across different disciplines, because it's hard to catch, right? We get a PDF, we are not getting updates after we've read that. And so when a researcher read this to when they write and publish their work can be a big gap. And so a lot can change. And so we're hoping to help make sure that researchers are not unknowingly citing retracted work. And then more generally, seeing how have others cited this work. And so here's another reference. This one's been decently cited. So 240 citations, 254 citations, 3 supporting. And then here's another one that has 96 citations, 3 supporting, 2 contrasting. And so this doesn't mean that this is not a reference you should use. But if you spent years of your life and months of years writing up this research, maybe you want to see what do those 2 supporting say, or those 3, or those 2 contrasting say, and those 3 supporting say. And so you can click this, and that will bring you over to Cite. And what you can see is how have others mentioned this work that I'm mentioning. And so this study from 2014 says this result contradicts the findings of Schwartz and Harfer, and then they cite 2007. If you scroll down, there's another one that says, contrary to previous findings that especially the poor are impaired by post-government income inequality, we found that inequality affected all parts of the population. And so this doesn't mean that this is a bad paper, but this extra nuance, this extra context will allow you to address that as an author or as a peer reviewer or as an editor to make sure that the references in your document are sound and what you think they are. This is now being integrated into, so this reference check is now being integrated into major submission systems like Manuscript Manager, Scholar One, Editorial Manager, and then EJP. And so ideally, this will be run at the point of submission to make sure that references are sound. And then you can also see, who are they referencing most? And so if you're an editor, this could be a potential good way to find peer reviewers. And then you can also see which journals are being referenced the most as well. Again, this part was designed with editors in mind. So I think maybe there was a question. I don't know how to get to, maybe not.
There was a question about how to access Cite, which I've answered.
Okay.
Probably at the start, just to explain that.
Yeah.
Free access, and that it's libraries that should sign up to get IP access. Can you remind us, is there free access for individuals as well?
So everyone gets 2 weeks for free when they sign up to explore it. You won't bump into anything. And then after that, you will start to hit different paywalls depending upon what you want. But yeah, we want to work with organizations to take that away. And so there's free access for individuals for 2 weeks, and then they'll start to hit those paywalls. And one thing that I can say around this is, so we are now in use by universities around the world. And I think the exciting thing about Cite is that it's not just a tool for bibliometricians or administrators or librarians to use quarterly to do these, reports. It can be really used, daily to better understand the literature in a lot of different ways. And so we see a lot of undergraduate students as well as graduate students using Cite. And I think that's really encouraging because it helps writing with their essays, and it also shows a new use case, right? I don't think that the graduate students and undergraduate students are generally using traditional citation indices so frequently, if at all, because it's quite complex, quite sophisticated, and it's really for looking at kind of this global picture, whereas Cite can really help better understand an individual article, a topic, or a group of papers. And so there's a few more things that I want to show, and one is our citation statement search. And so this is pretty new. This is about a month old at this point, maybe even less. And what this allows you to do is to search our 900 million citation statements to kind of ask the literature a question. So say you are interested or you've been tasked with writing an essay on hypertension rates in the Rohingya population. You can search that and see what does the literature say about this. And so instead of just matching in the title or in the abstract, this is now searching our 900 million citation statements. And from that, you can start to see what do all these different studies say about this. And so this one is talking about water supply shortages, and 30% of the households do not have access to soap. And then if you continue on in this snippet, you'll see hypertension rates of 51.5%. So this is a really powerful way to kind of ask the literature question and see directly answers, if you will. And I would emphasize not just individual answers, but answers from all these different papers that you can look at and quickly look at what is the literature saying about this. We've also have introduced many different ways to filter on this. So you can see who has published the most on this topic that I've searched. So if you're looking at this hypertension, you can see here's researchers that have published the most, and you can select those and see what have they said about these. So this is now looking at papers from that author to see what they've said about this. You can filter by years if you want to look at that. You can organize by the most recent publication. So if you want to see the most up-to-date studies on these different things, you can do that. You can also filter by to see if it's a supporting citation statement or a contrasting citation statement, or if you want to see work that is, the most supported, and maybe this won't work. Let's remove this filter. To better, control how you get through these, because sometimes, when you search this, there can still be thousands of different things. And so this is a good way to not just look at this, you can look at, nearly anything. So say you're looking at Avastin, a chemotherapy, and you want to look at adverse effects. If you type that in, you'll then see here's Avastin, and then here is talking about adverse events, and it's talking about and describing some of these. So 26.2% patients had some serious complications, which is quite high. And then there's some other ones like fatigue and headache. And so this is, again, a good way to see what the literature says about, any topic, whether it's Avastin or whether it's, Peppa Pig and how that influences, children watching this TV show. And I think that's a testament, again, kind of emphasizing what I said at the beginning of research being really amazing, informing nearly all aspects of life to see how something has been cited. And so this is new and quite powerful. And I would encourage you to sign up and try it out and try, kind of nearly anything and let us know what you think. Another thing that is less known, but I think is really powerful, is that we brought this capability to our browser extension. And so say you're on Twitter and you are reading you follow scientists, or say you're on a newspaper like New York Times. What we've allowed you to do is highlight any claim, any term, and then to right click it and then search it on Cite. And so I'll demonstrate that here. So here is a tweet from September 29th. And what it's looking at is no significant difference in viral load between vaccinated and unvaccinated, asymptomatic and symptomatic groups infected with the Delta variant. And then it shows this one figure. And so this is a preprint, very recent. It does not have any citations. And it's also making a pretty big claim, right? So it's saying there's no significant difference, and it's showing this. And it's using this one technique to look at that. And so what you can do is highlight these, say a phrase or an individual term, right click, and then search the citation statements. And so this is a good way to kind of look at any claim you've read. And again, that can be on a newspaper, it can be on social media, it can be on Facebook, on Twitter. You right click it. You need the browser extension for this to work though. If you right click it, it will then take you to our citation statement search. And so then you can see, what does the literature say about this claim that I've searched? And so here is a one that's looking at virological characteristics of SARS-CoV vaccine breakthrough infection in healthcare workers. And what they're finding is that positive swabs is 68.6% in vaccinated healthcare workers versus 84.9% in unvaccinated healthcare workers. And so they are seeing a difference between vaccinated and unvaccinated in terms of positivity swabs. And so this is a more full picture, and this study was not actually referenced in that paper or that preprint that I just showed. Notably, this is also a preprint. And so here's a conversation happening amongst preprints, and Cite allows you to kind of see that conversation. As you might notice, this preprint itself has been cited, and it has a supporting citation. So if you click that, it brings you over to Cite. And it, again, you can then see, okay, here's another study that's looking at that same claim and showing that there is a difference. So vaccinated individuals may be less infectious than unvaccinated individuals, consistent with a recent report examining Delta breakthrough infections. And so this search, this citation statement search is kind of like, the library or expert sitting on your shoulder that will allow you to look at virtually any topic to see what do experts say about this that's tied to data, that's tied to analyses, so that you can better utilize the literature and better get through it, and then ultimately go into the full text to read that and maybe cite that yourself. And so here is, Williamsburg rent rise, which is where I live, showing rents rising by 224% between 2003 and 2007 in one part, and then 158% in another part. And that's quite new, right? There's probably the closest thing to this is a Google Scholar, but it won't show this full excerpt. It'll only show fragments. And this is, I think a really powerful thing that can be utilized in day to day and can be utilized by almost anyone, including non-scientists. If you scroll down, there's a variety of different things that are also useful. We have badges that are freely available to embed. If you have a repository and you want to show this information to people that come to your repository, you can add the badge for free. You don't need any licensing for that. You can customize this if you have your own search tool. You can show type labels if you wanted to show it like that. And that is now how we're starting to show things on the version of record like at Royal Society. So here is Royal Society, and I'll show you what it looks like to see our metrics on the version of record. So let's just pick this random article and hold it cited. So if you scroll down, you can see again, this is my information because I have this browser extension. But if you scroll down to the article metrics, you can see here's citations from Dimensions, but here's also citations from Cite. And again, the key difference between the two is that we will show the citation context. Also, you might have noticed that one paper can cite another paper multiple times. And so this paper is citing 31, which is this target, in the results section and also in the discussion section. And so that really helps capture the conversation and better understand the nuance behind it. A few other things that I can mention, and then maybe I'll stop and hopefully we'll have some questions. We have a Zotero plugin, which is free and will show our information directly in Zotero. I'm happy to do more demos one-on-one with researchers at your organization. Just you can schedule that here, or you can email or set that up through Romy. You can also find various help guides under our resources. So this will show you different guides, how to use the tool, because again, there's quite a lot of it. And then if you go to these different for students or for university pages, this is aimed at really kind of trying to help you understand how this can benefit you as a student or as a university. And then if you really want to get into more details about how scite works, if you go to resources and go to how scite works, we wrote a paper on this recently that was published. That's not right. It was formally published, I guess, on October 12th, but it was accepted earlier than that in July. And so this will talk about really get into the details of the paper to better understand how scite works and to look at some of the limitations of this, because it's not going to solve everything, and to understand how it can be utilized. And so maybe I'll stop there, and hopefully we'll have some questions, and hopefully I didn't go too quickly. There is certainly a lot. And again, I would encourage you to sign up. It's free to explore for 2 weeks, and then we have made it free for many countries, and then offer a pretty steep discount to others. And hopefully, this will be valuable for you on the call, but also for researchers at your organizations to make the literature more alive and to better utilize it. So thank you very much. Maybe let me just put up my information, which is not there anymore. But yeah, it's josh@scite.ai. And then our Twitter's at scite.
Thanks, Josh. Can you just, though someone's asking for the URL, so it's just scite.ai, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Is the URL, if you want to have a look at it yourself. Like Josh has said, you can sign up for free as an individual for 2 weeks. There's also the free trial form that's on the EIFL website if you want to sign up for free trial for your institution. So that could be beneficial if you're in the discounted access group and you want everyone to try it at your institution. And then, as I mentioned at the start of the call, there's a number of countries that get free access through the EIFL agreement. You probably have received some information from your EIFL coordinators or your librarians. And if not, you should contact your library. If you have any questions about that, I'll put my details in the chat as well. So feel free to email me, and yours is just josh@scite.ai, isn't it? I'll put that in the chat as well if there's any technical questions. I'll quickly share again, there was another question about whether it's free or if there is a subscription. So I'll quickly...
I can also add, so now we have, in 2 countries, I think about 29 different institutions freely using scite. We generally can get that set up within a week. Sometimes it won't be, immediately. Once we set that up, we'll send you an email. We'll also send over training guides as PDFs and links to those. And we really want this to help researchers better utilize this information.
Okay, so I put in the overview of which countries get free access and which countries get discounted access in the chat there, and that's through your library. And I mean the discounted access is either $500 or $1,000 depending on the country price per institution. So if you want to know out of the discounted group where you fall, then drop me an email and I'll let you know.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions? I can't see anything else in the Q&A. Yeah, I'll also add the
I would say, so another thing that I can
Yeah,
another thing that I can say, so this was not a question, but Scite is primarily English articles, but we do capture non-English articles. Those we can't classify as supporting or contrasting just because the tool won't work on that. They'll show up as unclassified. We have a lot of Turkish articles because we work with a reseller in Turkey, and we've formed some relationships with an indexing group there to index more articles. We're certainly open to indexing more. So again, beyond just using Scite, if there's resources that we're missing, please ping me or email me, and we'll look at that. Because again, the conversation is not just in English, but it's happening across these different languages. The tool also is used by many different people around the world, and I've seen, through their browser extensions to auto-translate a lot of these things. And so I think that can be helpful when utilizing Scite.
So I have another question, but I'll just get them to email me, and because it depends which country you're based in, how you can sign up for access. Do you want to share the link maybe for the individual sign up?
Yeah, it's just scite.ai.
That might be useful.
Yeah, it should be. And then
is it under sign in?
Yeah, I mean, if you go to scite.ai, you'll see it on the homepage at the top right now. I have 20 million tabs open. Yeah.
Sign up. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, thanks everyone for joining. And as you go through it, please let us know if you have questions. There's also a little chat bubble on the bottom right of the screen. So if you have questions, it doesn't have to be email. You can simply ask via chat, and those will get pretty quick answers. And yeah, let us know what you think.
Cool. Thanks, Josh. There's one more question here about what percentage is African journals.
Percentage is always hard. So we get this question, what percentage is biomedical? What percentage is social science? And so it's hard to answer that. We also utilize Unpaywall, which is this massive list of open articles across the world. And it's not easily broken down by, these journals are from there or whatnot. We do have, I think over 20,000 different journals that you can see this information for. So if you go to scite.ai/journals, you can search any journal and see what our citation metrics are. I'm unsure how many are African. I'm unsure how many of those are open access or not. But if there's some that we're missing and you are a publisher or you work with publishers, we'd be happy to discuss indexing, and we're adding more and more, and the database is growing each week, each month, and sometimes each day.
Excellent. Thanks, Josh. Okay, well, we'll wrap up then. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'll email the recording to everyone, also everyone who's registered and couldn't make it today. And if there's any other questions, I'll let you know.
Perfect.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.